Meditation retreat, though, is also a chance to talk about some sort of subjects which maybe would be off the table for the regular Wednesday classes, sort of subjects which maybe can be misconstrued or maybe would put complete newcomers off. But as we get more involved with the temple and more involved with the temple community, then it's the sort of things which, although they might be unfamiliar to us, but it's good to know about or familiarize ourselves with gradually as we become maybe a more integral part of that community itself. And like I was saying, on a meditation retreat, it's not just about the hours of meditation or the increase in the time that we spend meditating, but it's also about the time in between and learning about the temple culture and context as well, to see how that helps with our practice. So I guess my job is to do a little bit of monksplaining about some of the things which are maybe unfamiliar that you might come across in the course of your going through your day, retreat day, which go on in the temple, which might otherwise seem quite mysterious or just arbitrary, or maybe even superstitious if you don't understand what they're all about. But what I would like to explain is that many of the things which may be unfamiliar, which seem like a little bit of a culture shock to you, they do have a reason behind them. Part of them is to do with self-discipline, things which we heard about with the precepts yesterday. I called them integrity yesterday, but another way of explaining them is like a self-discipline. So it's a sort of sense of responsibility which you volunteer on yourself with free will, not have imposed on you, but it's something you take upon yourself to sort of intensify your training. The other part is that of respect, which again is a word that's often misunderstood. One reason that it's misunderstood is that you hear a lot of sort of Tumblr proverbs, things like, I respect those who respect me, I deserve respect, this sort of thing, where respect becomes a sort of like tolerance, grudging tolerance of differences and this sort of stuff, weird and wacky things. But within the context of meditation, the same word is often used in a rather different way, which is more to do with our capacity to absorb new and beneficial things into our repertoire. Actually, literally, the word respect, if you break it down, is made of two parts, like the re part, which means like doing something again. And then the spect part, which is a little bit like your spectacles or glasses, which means looking at something. So the two together would mean looking at something again. That's why you have respect. So instead of just like taking things for granted, you look at it again. But what are you looking for? You're looking for what may be positive in this thing or person or experience, which you can learn from. So many of the aspects of culture sort of reinforce this sense of respect in like, what are we here for? What are we wanting to learn about? What are we filling in the gaps in our knowledge about? Sometimes we need to look for those things in an active way, not just like passively absorb them. So many of the things like, let's say, bowing to a monk or showing respect to a monk, this sort of thing. If you ask why, it's not just, well, Thai people do that, or like we've done it for years already. That's not a good excuse. But the excuse that really ought to be given to you is helping you to look for something you can learn from. Yeah, it's opening you up to those new things which normally we just like ignore or just shut down on or deny or whatever. Yeah. So some of the things, it's a long list and we'll see how far we can get with them. But some of the things you may be already doing, but you don't know the reasons for them, or you just don't even notice you're doing them anymore. So let's have a look and see. Two headings, one of respect and one of self-discipline. Okay. So first thing is Right from the front door of the temple, you notice immediately it's not like most other places. We take our shoes off. And this is connected with respect for the place. Some people take off their shoes when they go into their houses anyway. It's like, just depends on your preference. But taking off one's shoes, somehow like coming into contact with the ground, is seen as a sign of respect. Also, almsgiving, although it takes place inside here, but many people remove their shoes before they perform an act of generosity, again, out of respect for the generosity. Yeah. So this is one thing which you notice immediately. It's not just like, oh, well, Thai people do that, but it's actually considered a sign of respect. There was once a king who thought he was like above such things, and he wasn't very keen on removing his shoes for any sort of situation, including going into a temple. There's a story, his name was King Bimbisara. In the end, he came to a sticky end. And the karma he ended up actually passing away from eventually was wounds to his feet. Yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail and put you off your lunch, but you know, it's sort of connected. Another funnier story I heard about this was a temple in Chiang Mai where they had these feral chickens, but like they knew all about people needing to take their shoes off in the temple. So anyone who came in the temple, and a lot of tourists who came who didn't know about like temple culture, they would come and peck the feet of anyone who didn't take their shoes off. So in this temple, it was very strictly enforced by chickens. Yes.
พี่คะโลลี่สกินมันหลุดไปอะค่ะ
Oh no, it's constantly got this problem with being lonely. Let's see if we can reunite them. Okay, not that it's that interesting. The other thing which you see, the big screen with, I think it's down on number 2 as you enter the doorway, about not pointing your feet at things of respect. Again, it's a sort of Thai thing, but you can trace it back to Buddhist scriptures too. Pointing your feet, there's a sort of, the head is seen as like the top of the body and therefore a respectful place. Therefore, bowing your head is seen as a respectful thing. The opposite would be pointing your feet at things or standing on things. Yeah. And a story from the scriptures to do with this was that there was once a monk called Prasagata who was particularly endowed with mental powers to the point that he could use his mental powers to overcome a sort of mythical animals, very dangerous ones, and he was celebrated throughout India because of his ability to rid the neighborhood of these sort of dangerous animals. He was not afraid of them. But the people, they decided they wanted to show their gratitude to this monk by getting him some sort of food or drink that was hard to find. And normally that the monks did not get to have for their meal times. And someone suggested, oh, well, something the monks never have is like white alcohol. So all the people said, yeah, white alcohol, that would be a nice rarity, a sort of delicacy for the monks. So when the monks came around with the alms bowl, and please do not try this at home, they put all this white alcohol in with all the other monks' food. So at the end of the day, the monk was finding it pretty hard to stand up after his meal. And he sort of walked in a very inelegant way back towards his accommodation and sort of fell down along the way and was just lying in the middle of the street. And the Buddha also returned from his mealtime and said, oh, what is that monk doing, like lying down, face down in the street? And the other monks sort of helped him back to the accommodation. But every time he woke up, he turned around with his feet pointing at the Buddha. And this was, the Buddha didn't say anything about the alcohol, but what he did point out is, alcohol cannot be good because this monk is showing such disrespect. So it's actually the pointing the feet is actually from, as a sort of ancient sort of precedent as well. Letting monks sit in an honored place. So a teacher, notice I'm a little bit higher than you. That's the reason for the stage. Yeah. But if it were, let's say, a house, a monk visiting someone's house, then they would let the monk sit in on a nice chair or something. And in Sri Lankan homes, they actually put out a white sheet over the sofa or something like that to make it like new before the monks sit down. So you see that in Sri Lankan. Have a different way of dealing with that. And not stepping over things of respect, because of course soles of your feet would be then higher. And not climbing up higher than things that you respect. I always had a big argument in the layout of houses. The monks should always be on the top floor, so that people are not walking over their heads. It makes it quite difficult to use some sort of houses where all the good rooms are downstairs. Yeah, you can imagine. But this is the sort of logic behind it. Keeping quiet when others are meditating. This is respect for what? Not for monks, for the meditation itself. So we try to be respectful of meditation, or the fact that person must be right on the brink of making some sort of breakthrough, and yeah, you let your cell phone go off. Ding dong. No more enlightenment for our friends today. Yeah, so not good, right? So actually having respect for their meditation or meditation in general. Thai language, some of you I've heard like Namaskar and this sort of thing from the folks in the Thai class. They actually have a whole set of terminology connected with like sacred objects. So if you are aware of those things, like even just using the word venerable, for example, that is seen as also a sign of respect. Right? Instead of saying, "Hey Jimmy," or that would be the venerable Jimmy. Yeah. Show that you are like genuine or like respectful in a way, like especially if you are offering a criticism of some sort. Sometimes putting your hands in a gesture of prayer when speaking to monks is seen as a good thing. Greeting monks in proper way, so the Namaskar thing, rather than any other sort of words. Yes. Not shaking hands. This is sometimes hard in the Western world. Monks are not allowed to come in physical contact, especially with ladies. You heard this from before? So generally, especially since COVID, it's been quite convenient for monks, because you got social distancing, and you don't need to make a big issue about whether that person is male or female, or whether you're not sure whether they're male or female or whatever. It's like you can just avoid the issue completely, like do sort of air hugs or whatever. But yes, shaking hands, it's seen as like a formal way of greeting. I noticed one of my teachers once got sort of backed into a corner by a Dutch minister or something or other who was a female. And of course, they want to shake hands with you to show like everything's good and diplomatic. And yeah, not to shake hands would actually be worse than shaking hands. So he would have to then go and sort out his self-discipline and penance and whatever for himself quietly later on. But sometimes it would be very difficult otherwise. So generally this sort of thing goes, people don't come in physical contact so much in Asia. It's seen as a sort of personal space is seen as somehow more sacred. Yeah. If you're bowing as a group, then it's good to bow all together rather than separately. So hence having the bowing head. And bowing in a proper way rather than just in a random way. For example, people in Thai culture bow to their parents as well. I think in Indian culture too. I went to India, people were bowing at my feet quite a lot. And they all came out in a long line. So it took about half an hour. Yeah. So if they just done like one and done for like all together, it would be good. But of course, each person has to come up and show their respect to the monk. So it takes quite a long time. So just logistically, not so great. But the difference between, let's say, a corpse or parents is that for monks, you put your hands flat on the ground when you are bowing, rather than like that on the ground. Just sort of handy fact. Although you might be respectful to the monk, but don't pay respect when the monk is walking past, because otherwise the monk has to stop. So it's not generally the done thing. You let the monk make space for the monk to walk past, rather than, oh, here comes a monk, let's bow to him. Or in a public place. Sometimes in a sort of international context, we have to sort of adapt to like a multicultural society. So let's say you're sending the monks off at the airport. That might not be the best place to bow down right on the ground in front of all these other people, like saying, what? Yeah, it's sort of slightly embarrassing. So generally, you've got to sort of adapt to the culture in a way that's still respectful, but maybe not like full on. It's a Thai thing, as far as I know. I'm not sure if other cultures have it. Walking past people, you duck slightly. You probably get this in your Thai class. But again, it's a sign of respect. It's like you imagine they're watching the TV and you walk in front of the TV. If you duck slightly as you're walking past, it's seen as like, at least you're acknowledging that presence. I once went on an arms round in one Thai park where a lot of people go for jogging. And it's funny that the joggers, quite a lot of them have respect for the monks. So they're jogging around the park. When they come to the monk, they stop and they walk past, or let the monk go past, and then they continue jogging. Yeah. So if you happen to be jogging in the area. Not standing with your back to monks. So the monk's there, then people generally like take an interest in the fact the monk's there, rather than like just carrying on with their own conversation. Yeah. In the temple, they have separate plates and tableware for the monks. Yeah, so that might be something you come across, especially if you're washing plates here. Did you discover it yet? Yeah, so that's the thing, respect for monks. And generally, it's sort of the clothing is color-coded anyway, so you're unlikely to get that confused, yes. So white for lay people, orange for monks. As you notice, at least Tennessee sweatshirts for monks, yes. There's one guy who turned up in Azusa. He decided he wanted to show his affinity for monks by dressing all in orange as well, and people, that did not go down well. Good intention, you laugh, but like he wasn't laughing. He couldn't understand why people didn't think this was like showing sort of solidarity with the monks by dressing just like a monk. Like, no. Yeah. So yes, sometimes it's worth explaining things. Even for cleaning, generally in the temple, they tend to have a sort of hierarchy of rags and cleaning cloths. Have you discovered that yet? Not yet, but I probably will. But like, for example, the cloth you use for cleaning the restrooms would be a different color from the one you would use to clean, let's say, the sink top. Different again from the one you'd use in the kitchen. And then there's a yet higher one that would use for cleaning the things connected with the shrine, or especially the crystal bowl. Different cloth. So again, respect, apart from that sort of actual cleanliness, would be the reason for that. Not handling respected objects with dirty hands. So crystal ball, chanting book, this sort of thing. If the Buddha image is not in use, generally it is covered. Sometimes with a spare rope or something like that. And sometimes it's not in use or the room is being used for something else, then it would be covered. So if it's on display, then it's the idea is that it's available for people to pay respect to. The funny story I heard, have you ever heard of Jubu? Jewish people who are actually quite into Buddhism, but they don't consider themselves to have changed religion. And because bowing to Buddha statues is considered idolatry in like Old Testament or whatever, then out of consideration for the Jewish meditation group, they always put a cloth over the Buddha. And then one day, they happened to use the Buddha statue somewhere else, and all the people are asking, "Oh, where's the Buddha gone?" It's like, it's not like covering it; they had ignored it completely. They actually felt it was part of their activity as well. So, yeah, sometimes people are more observant than they let on. On temple property, because everything which we use basically comes from people who have donated it. We are particularly careful about waste and breaking things or neglect in general, maybe more so than just like institutions generally. Because you can imagine the feelings of a person. Let's say they've donated a chair for the temple and it's been in use, and then someone's just left it out in the rain until it's ruined. How would that person feel next time they are thinking of giving a chair to the temple? Not good, right? Like they would probably not want to do that ever again. So within the temple, we have a responsibility to take really good care of the things that we do use. Yeah, maybe more so than, so please be mindful of that when you're using just even things like food. Don't take more than you need to eat, so that there's not something wasted or cleared into the trash. Yeah, there's one guy again, quite new to supporting the monks. He said he wanted to know what happens to all the excess food in the temple. And if I'd said we throw it in the trash, of course, then that would be it. He's just like, that's enough. But luckily, the answer to that question in the temple is like, it's shared out so everyone has something to go home with. There's never a single thing wasted in the temple. If it's not, it's made into soup for the next morning, that sort of thing. Oh, he was very satisfied with that answer. But it's the truth. That's the way we do things. Being mindful when in the temple, especially of things like sound, the fact that might be someone around the corner meditating, that sort of thing. The sort of things that conversations you might be having, and trying not to take more from the temple than you give. So some people say, "Oh, are you funded by the government to have like such a great place to use?" No, it's because the culture of the temple is that people bring more than they take from the temple. So generally, you will see for the regulars in the temple, they always have something in their hand when they come to the temple. You know, something which they know which will be used, even if it's something as humble as like toilet rolls or cleaning products, this sort of thing. Something they know will be used. So we move on to self-discipline, and this is often connected with the fact that monks have quite a high level of precepts which they need to keep and maintain strictly. It's a little bit connected like with the handshaking thing just now. Monks lead a celibate life, but a celibacy doesn't mean just not getting married, but it also concerns anything that might be perceived as scandalous or be used against the monks in the future. So because of this, the rules not govern just like coming in physical contact with ladies, but even things that might be construed as slightly iffy for monks' behavior. So, for example, there are rules which the monks have about not being left alone in the same room with a lady, because then people can sort of make all sorts of headlines out of that. Oh, monk is left alone in room with ladies. Wink, wink, so you can fill in all the other details for yourself. So there's what do you do? If you are in that situation, you can leave the door slightly ajar. Yeah, so it is not a closed room. Or better still, if you're a lady, you need to talk to the monk about something, take a friend with you. Yeah. Also in our temple, some other temples that are not quite so strict as this, if you are receiving guests, you don't receive the guests in your accommodation, but you go to a more central place, like here, for example, in a reception room, where everything is above board. And it cannot be misconstrued. There's a book I read about a big scandal that occurred in a Zen center in San Francisco, and it occurred from taking shoes off. And it turned out that there was the teacher's shoes and a pair of ladies' shoes in front of his accommodation. And this sort of led to a huge scandal, which eventually led to a whole new leadership in that particular thing. So obviously this actually comes from our nun Kunyai, who laid down all the rules for the temple to have a certain accommodation is where lay people visit the temple may not go. It's reserved just for the monks for the reason of being sort of transparent. Even not being out of earshot with a lady. So you might be out in the open, like all above board, right? But who knows what they're saying together? Ooh. So again, even that needs to be taken care of. So if you're like out in the distance somewhere, you could be having sort of secret conversations. That is not considered right either. Offering cloth, you know all about these? Some Europeans call them, oh, the yellow. Yes, you forgot your yellow, they say. So yellow offering cloth. What's this for? Can you tell me? Why do they have it? COVID regulations? Who can explain it? Yes, so generally female. And some people said, how about someone who's been gender reassigned as a lady? What do you think? Yeah, it gets more difficult. Yeah, the plot thickens. Okay, but generally, I will use an offering cloth for anyone who considers themselves female as well. Yeah, so that's politically more correct, apparently. Yes. So the idea is, if you're accepting something from a person who's holding on to the same object while you are receiving it from them, then there's a chance you might brush their hand. So that is just, this is developed to make things a little bit more transparent. It's only found in the Thai temples, I should add, although I think it actually originated from Cambodia. So in Sri Lanka, yeah, the monks just accept things directly. Yes. Oh, it's color coordinated, of course. Yes. But I should say that in some temples, the monks all wear brown, and then it will be brown. Yeah, so color coordinated. Going to the temple, not so much here, especially in the cold climate, it's not so much of an issue. But some people, like, they're on their way to a disco, and like they drop into the temple on the way, so they're on their disco like attire, and all the monks have a heart attack. Okay, so generally it's good to dress, I guess, what you would call conservatively when going to the temple, or at least have a jacket in your car to put on over your disco attire when you drop in at the temple. Yeah. Generally, things which don't go down too well Here, I understand it's not so much a problem. In California, we have more of a problem, especially in the summer, because it's just like really hot. And you can't expect people to like cover up completely. So you see a lot more shoulders and legs than generally you would prefer to see as a temple community member. And sometimes it's awkward too, because it's like a free country. So hence we have these things called sitting. No, the white cloth which the ladies have. It's a lap cloth, I suppose. So yeah, generally we try to avoid having them because it just takes so much explanation. So here I am explaining, doing the monksplaining for you. It's just in case people have short dresses or shorts, and then it sort of takes care of everything, especially if you happen to be switching sides. Some people argue actually, oh, men they're wearing shorts. Why don't they have to have cloths? And I suppose if the temple was run by a bunch of nuns, then they would probably have issue with men wearing shorts. Yeah. If you offer things, the polite thing to do is to give things with two hands to show a sort of like, I guess, that it's not just casual, but it's like intended fully. Some places they are lazy or in a hurry and there's a lot of plates of things. They just push all the plates together and say, well, they're in physical contact, so like I offer this one and like all the other ones are connected, so it's like, that's the lot. Okay, some places it's acceptable, but it's not particularly sort of, it's not a particularly elegant interpretation. So if the monk is not in a huge hurry, it's better to offer each one at a time. And once it's offered, please don't take it back again. Otherwise, it needs to be offered all over again. Did you do some offering this morning? So some people say, oh, that's offered now, and I'll rearrange the table for you. It's like, so you can reach everything. If you pick it up again, it has to be offered again. So if it's offered, let the monks take care of it. And no need to bow after each plate. Otherwise, again, it takes like half an hour and all the food gets cold. Yeah, covered that one. Not everything needs to be offered. For example, plain water doesn't need to be offered to monks. Also, that goes for the tableware, which is like on loan. It's not a gift to the monk, which they can take home afterwards. Toothpicks also don't need to be offered. And then, connected with our 8 precepts, there's this explanation about why not all food is food. Because we know for monks, food needs to be offered, right? Like for each meal, that meal needs to be offered freshly. But monks talk about 4 different categories of food. There is what's known as forever food, which is really not food, it's more like medicine. If it's offered once, then the monks can keep it and use it until it runs out. So that generally covers things that are medicines. And some things which you actually eat and chew too, they are medicines. For example, the tamarinds I mentioned, if they're offered once, then they're good for forever, okay? Because they're considered like good in a medicine chest. Then there are things which are good for 7 days. They need to be re-offered after 7 days. And generally this covers the things which be called pana, which some have a strange quality, which is that they may ferment while they are in storage. So what started out as apple juice, after 7 days ferments and turns into apple cider. And then you get those behaviors like the monk who fell down the street, not good, right? So after 7 days, the idea is that someone reevaluates them to see if they have fermented yet or not, and then you can be replaced with something that is not alcoholic. Yes. Then there are things that last all day, even after midday. So things which might be an example of that is, let's say, cheese. Cheese can be eaten in the morning, but also it counts as bana in the evening as well, so that can be kept late for later, yes, by the monks. But general food, so solid food, sort of things that you would consider like nutritious, if it's offered in the morning, let's say at breakfast time, it could be kept only until lunch, and then it needs to be returned to the lay people. So those are all the things which are not allowed on 8 precepts in the afternoon. Most of the things which you would be allowed, which I mentioned, dairy products, fruit juices, some of those medicines, maybe to help with your digestion, they would be in the category of the 1-day stuff or the 7-day stuff. So even for the 8 precepts, it's sort of it's a sort of subset of the sort of rules which monks follow. Yeah, so a little bit more complicated than you thought. When food is not food. Sometimes the monks are so important that they get called away halfway through a meal. If at all possible, it's good to take care of things for monks until they finish their meal, like answering the phone or when someone rings the doorbell, that sort of thing. Yeah, because sometimes if monks are following a particularly strict set of rules, they forfeit the chance to continue their meal if they have to get up from the meal. So what's called a one-sitting practice, which some monks follow. And it's not considered particularly graceful for monks to have to take bites out of things. Like, let's say, an apple. So generally, it's cut into bite-sized pieces before offering to monks. I think it's also part of the reason is that it's hard to share around half an apple if you're taking a bite out of it. Yeah, so it's more like sociable too. And minimize the bones and seeds and stuff in food. Otherwise, the monks have to clear those things out of their mouth, which is not particularly inspiring of faith. Yeah. Not offering the wrong things. Any idea what might be wrong things to offer monks? Oh, white alcohol. Yes, that might be one. Cheese? No, cheese is good. Well, shoes which are maybe the wrong color. Yeah. What might be the wrong color? Well, monks don't have to wear orange everything, but black is generally not considered a good color for monks, even for shoes and stuff. Sort of very luminous colors or eye-catching colors. Also, for some reason, green, blue, that sort of thing. Yeah, it doesn't color coordinate very well. But some other examples of things which you should not offer. Monks in our tradition are not vegetarian, but some sort of meats are. The Buddha said that they should not be offered to monks for various reasons. I can't remember exactly, but there are certain carnivorous animals like tigers, leopards, lions, cheetahs, panthers, bears, I suppose. There's about 6 already. No, we didn't get to that yet. The reason for these is the carnivorous animals sometimes have parasites in their muscles, which then, if the food is undercooked, will infect the person who has eaten them. So therefore, not a good idea to eat them. The snake, if you eat snake meat, then the smell of the snake comes out in your sweat, and then all the snakes which didn't get eaten will come and want to bite you to get their own back. So eating snake is not a good idea for this reason. horse and elephant meat, because they are beasts of burden, which are very useful to people, and therefore, out of gratitude, you should not eat those sorts of meat. So if you're living in France or whatever, maybe you have to avoid the horse meat. Yeah. And the last one is human meat. So no cannibalism allowed. And unfortunately, there is one example of that in the scriptures where someone wanted to offer some soup on a day when all the shops were closed. So they thought, oh, never mind, I'll make the ultimate sacrifice and cut a chunk of my own flesh and make soup out of it to offer the monks so they have something nutritious to eat. And once the Buddha suspected that, he made a blanket rule that that's going too far. Yes, we don't want supporters with chunks out of them. Musical instruments, weapons, provocative or inappropriate colors, alcohol, liqueur, chocolates, cigarettes. And probably these days it would include things like gaming consoles, Oculus headsets, this sort of thing, which I don't know what monks would be doing with those. Yes. If you're offering water, monks are supposed to sit down when they're drinking something, so they should also have a seat available. And offering food at the right time, which means like before midday, not like 10 minutes to midday, so the monks have to wolf it down and have afterwards to get indigestion. And not offering leftovers where possible, because the karmic outcome of offering leftovers is that what comes back to you will be plentiful, but it will be plentiful leftovers. Yes. And there's all sorts of funny stories about why people get very old husbands. You can probably fill in the details for yourself. Why could this lady only ever have like old husbands to marry? Because she always offered like stuff that is like near its expiry date, you know. Yeah, you laugh, but this is all like in the scriptures. I didn't make this up, okay? And suppose you take the monks to a restaurant, the monks should be sitting on a separate table. If it's not possible, often it's possible to pull the table slightly apart, because otherwise there's this problem of the food like going around the table and then needing to be offered back to the monks after it's gone past the lay people, which so it's better just that there's a sort of slight separation. How are we doing for time? Nearly up. Things to talk about monks about. Oh, monks are so full of wisdom. I want to talk about them on all my subjects, all my personal problems. I want to talk to the monk about them, and maybe the monk can sort me out. Some things might not be suitable for monks to know about, like too much information, especially on like, let's say, feminine hygiene or whatever. Yeah, sort of maybe ask someone else. Okay, ask a nun. Some people say, oh, monks, in that case, marital problems, this sort of thing. Sometimes the monks can offer some advice, but maybe not on everything. But sometimes they can have a good objective opinion about things because they're sort of slightly standing back from the whole issue. But yes, some things, maybe think about it first before you ask certain questions. Don't ask the monks about how their meditation is going. You know why not? Oh, we want to know, how's your meditation? It's like, you've been sitting up there all this time and like we've been sweating out through our meditation. We want to know, are you any better off than us? You're not allowed to ask. Yeah. Because, can you fill in the rest? Monks can have to do penance, and sometimes they get kicked out of the order completely if they boast about their meditation attainments. So the Buddha circumvented the whole problem by saying monks don't get to talk about their meditation experience. Whether they're true, what they say is true or not, just sort of avoid the whole issue. 3 monks is okay. The problem came when in the past there's been monks who like everyone was starving because there's like a famine going on. So some monks said, oh, I've got a great idea. I'm going to say that I'm enlightened, so people bring me all their food. Yay! Like everyone else is like down to their bones and ribs showing, and like these monks are really fat and jolly because they have tricked the other people into thinking that they are enlightened, so they get all the best food. Yeah, not good. Be careful when making pledges. Sometimes people pledge help for the temple, and the monks are only allowed to ask for as much as that person has pledged. So let's say a person says, oh, I would like to offer my help to provide any medicines which the monks need in the temple throughout this 3-month period. The monks may only take them up on that for 3 months and no more. So if you want to pledge something, be careful what you say so that it's not sort of doesn't limit your opportunity. Don't expect the monk to be a go-between. Yeah, especially in things which may not be considered appropriate for monks. Like, can you mention to get that person to pay up their debts to me? Because everyone likes to hear from a monk, and I don't want to say it directly. Maybe that using a monk as a debt collector, not good. Okay. Don't expect monks to do jobs they're not right livelihood. Yeah, I suppose that would be a good example already. And not asking what monks want to eat unless they are ill. So it's better to give monks a selection of things to eat rather than saying, oh, do you want this or not? Provide a selection and see what comes back. And that will give you your answer, generally speaking. Generally, monks are not supposed to be choosy about their food, especially with people who are maybe new to the temple. It would be considered inappropriate to be fussy about, I want this but not that. It goes on. Anyway, monks are not supposed to dig or prune trees, but generally we do anyway because no one else is helping. Yeah. Monks are not supposed to sleep in the same room as lay people, like even if they're male. But if at a pinch, it's allowed for 3 nights, but 3 nights only. Monks should not have to run. Sometimes we have that to catch trains and so on. It's better to get there in good time. Yeah, not considered very elegant. Yes, monks should. If you're inviting a monk to do something, generally it's good to offer transport to whatever that thing is as well. Although in America monks are allowed to drive in some temples, in our temple they are not. Mostly it comes from the complication of what happens if you happen to have an accident and hurt someone. And that karma does not look good. Don't play sort of disco music in the car when the monk is in your car. Yes. And there's some extra rules that sometimes monks practice. I mentioned the one sitting rule, where some monks adopt a particularly strict practice. Sometimes monks have 1 meal a day. Sometimes monks might eat only out of their own bowl. These are some examples of things which monks may practice, which it may be good for you to know about if you're taking care of them. But just to finish, I think I can probably skip the end there. It's good to know the reasons for things behind these many multifarious rules, instead of thinking, oh no, not yet another rule from the temple. There's a little story I'll finish off with, which is called in Thai called Ten Song Bat, which is there was an old monk and he used to be very successful in his alms round. Every time he went for alms round, he used to get a lot of food given to him. So all the other monks were like interested to know what is this monk doing that is special, which leads him to have so much success in his alms round. So maybe we can get so much food as well. And what they noticed is that every time the monk before he went for his alms round, he would hold up his bowl to the light, and only then would he go on his alms round. So they all started copying him. Whenever they were about to go on the alms round, they would all hold up their bowl as well. And so you're like, oh, maybe this is going to be the lucky thing that's going to make us get more food given to us on our alms round. So the monks copied the monks, and it's like passed along. So eventually all the monks, like in the whole sort of county, were all like, oh, hold up the bowl before we go on the alms round. Maybe we'll get more food. Until eventually one day it got to a very young novice. And they said, oh, you didn't hold up your bowl to the light yet. Better do that quickly. And the novice said, why? And all the monks said, oh, actually, we don't know why. Who knows? And they said, well, I copied you. And he said, well, why do you do it? Oh, I don't know why. So I do it because the other monk did it. And eventually got all the way back, this question, to the original old monk who was holding up his bowl to the light. And he said, oh, I'm holding it up to see if there's a crack in my bowl yet. Because according to the monastic discipline, the crack in my bowl has to be 2 inches long until I can get a new bowl. And I have been waiting to get a new bowl for such a long time already. And the people said, what? You know, it's like nothing to do with like success in alms round or whatever. This guy just been waiting to have a new bowl already for such a long time. He cannot replace the bowl until the crack is long enough. So he's holding it up to the light every morning to see that. So sometimes if we don't know reasons for things, we can blindly follow things for no reason. But that's not the idea of having all this etiquette and rules and regulations. It's generally there's a reason behind everything. So if you want to have not just knowledge of things, but also the wisdom to know get to the root of what is the actual benefit it brings of following this rule, sometimes it's good to dig a little deeper and to ask about it. And hopefully you get a good answer, a better answer than just, well, it's what we always do, or it's because Thai people do that. And that's not the reason. You need to dig a little bit deeper. But there should be reasons for everything because, as I said, Buddhism is supposed to be a religion of wisdom. Yes. For today, I noticed that we mustn't make the monks run or offer food right up to the last moment. So I better finish it there.